Hello everyone, this is Rod and welcome back to Academia Magica. Today's topic is Theurgy. So we'll be talking about Theurgy, which I think is a word that you may have come across already several times, especially who reads and research into ancient magic. It's a word that actually stretched all the way to our days as well, although there's sometimes the meaning goes more or less accurate. So essentially we'll talk about this practice and what is theurgy and what is supposed to do. And first of all, I think it's important to make a distinction between what is a theurgist and what is a theologist. So theurgist is a person that works with the gods. So it's a person that invokes the divinity, that can work with the divinity and in somehow try to elevate itself or himself or herself toward a certain higher level closer to the divinity, while of course a theologist is a person that study and talk about the divinity, about the gods. So Theurgy was born around the beginning of the current era. We have basically 227 fragments left, today called the Chaldean Oracle. These fragments seems they were received from oracle from the divinity and written down by Julian, then later was known as Julian the Chaldean, and his son Julian the Theurgist. Both Julians were living in the time of Marcus Aurelius. So we're talking about the 2nd century current era. So before moving forward though, to Theurgy itself, I think it's important to remember that Theurgy was born within the context of the Neoplatonic thought. So they were the Neoplatonic philosopher that brought Theurgy into life, as we will see a little bit later. So what is this Neoplatonic thought? Neoplatonism, again, is a term that was that came out around the 18th century. So these Neoplatonic philosophers, they were not calling themselves Neoplatonists. They were just philosophers that were trying to bring back the teaching from the Academy of Plato and the Lyceum of Aristotle. And then in the 18th century, this part of Platonic thought was renamed, the latest Platonic thought was renamed as Neoplatonic, and Neoplatonist, the philosopher representing this area. So what is the essential thought? Of course, it varies from philosopher to philosopher. There are different interpretations to it, but just to give a very basic and very common understanding of what is the Neoplatonic thought, is that there was a first entity that they call the One, and the One is very similar to what we would say today, close to a concept of a monotheistic God. So is a cause and effect in itself, and is still a very transcendent entity, even beyond an entity, is the very beginning. So from this One, from this Neoplatonic One, we have an emanation, a further emanation called the Nous, and the Nous is identified as the supreme intellect of the entity. So this entity starts to have a kind of thinking process that emanates again into a third stage identified as anima, or the anima mundi, which is the soul. Finally, when we enter into this third stage, we get closer and closer to the material world. In fact, anima, the soul, is as a relation of one to many, because anima splits then and gets into the bodies. So when it gets into the bodies, of course, it gets into the many. So anima, the soul, is something that is united but diversified, and is one to many, is in between the divinity, is in between the higher stage and our material world. So it's kind of the connection between the two. So the nous of the Neoplatonism was also known as the Father, and it was considered to be made of pure light. So this is very close to the Plato's concept of the world of idea. This would be in the nous. All the way down to anima, the anima mundi, the soul, that in the Chaldean oracle is identified with goddess Hecate. So we will find in the Chaldean oracle a lot of reference to fire, a lot of reference to Hecate, a lot of reference to pure light. And the manifestation, the epiphany of the divinity being always in somehow accompanied by some flashes or some kind of emanation of light. So light for them was the brighter it is, the closer, the higher you get into the divine spheres. Talking about epiphany, there is an interesting tarot card, which is the card of the sun, which most likely Mr. Wade was he read for sure the Chaldean oracle, because we have the representation of the card, the sun, which is exactly corresponding to one of the description of the Chaldean oracle as an epiphany, as a manifestation.
Having spoken these things, you will behold either a fire leaping skittishly like a child over the airy waves, or an unformed fire from which a voice emerges, or a rich light that whirs around the field in a spiral. But it is also possible that you will see a horse flashing more brightly than light, either also a fiery child mounted on the swift back of the horse, covered with gold or naked.
So back to our philosophers, which we have very famous names within the Neoplatonic philosophers group. We have names like Plotinus, we have Porphyry, Iamblichus, Plutarch, Hypatia of Alexandria, and Proclus, but Proclus most likely one of the latest Neoplatonic philosophers. For today, when we talk about theurgy, I think we most likely we have to focus, also for a matter of time, we'll have to focus only among two philosophers, which are Porphyry and Iamblichus. Iamblichus being was a student of Porphyry, that later decided to develop his own idea, so he detached from his teacher, from Porphyry. But Porphyry is definitely one of the Neoplatonic philosophers who heavily brought theurgy into the Neoplatonic teachings. So of Porphyry we have writing, one is called De Abstinentia, about abstinence, and the other one is the Philosophy ex Oraculis, which is the philosophy from the oracles. And one letter that he wrote to an Egyptian priest. This letter is known as Letter to Anebo, and it contains a series of questions related to theurgy itself. And the letter was answered, or better, the answer to this letter is attributed to his ex-student Iamblichus, and today goes with the title on the mysteries, De Mysteri Egyptorum. The real title actually is the answer to the letter of Porphyry, so pretending to be an Egyptian priest named Abammon, the answer is the answer of Abammon. Again, the title De Mysteri Egyptorum, on the mysteries, was given by Ficino when he translated the Greek into Latin. So this correspondence, the letter to Anebo from Porphyry and the answer attributed to Iamblichus, the Mysteri, or the answer of Abammon, is definitely one of the major source of study for to understand the concept of theurgy. Although these two philosophers have different views on many aspects of what is the practice itself, it's definitely one of the major source to understand what is theurgy about. So essentially, to keep it very basic, theurgical ritual would have given the possibility to purify the theurgist's soul by elevating it and bringing it into some lower ranks of the divine hierarchy, where the soul could gaze into the divine world. Therefore, there was this process of purification. And the process of purification also involved getting free from the cycle of rebirth. There are essentially two main kind of theurgic ritual. One is called telestic theurgy, and the other one is medianic theurgy. So in the telestic theurgy, the divinity is called within a statue that the theurgist has to prepare with certain material and certain preparation that goes with the sympathy of the divinity. In fact, in the philosophy from oracles of Porphyry, there is a very clear description on how to make and animate a statue of Hecate. Like, for instance, it says to use wild rue, resin, myrrh, frankincense, pulverize some kind of small lizard. So all these ingredients that we find that are sympathizing with the goddess Hecate and are used to make the statue of Hecate. After that, the ritual called telestic, so the telestic ritual would be to animate or give word to the statue, which is very similar to rituals that were used in ancient Egypt. So anyway, Neoplatonism is an Egyptian born in Egypt, so it took definitely a lot from the Egyptian magic as well. So when the statue is completed, certain invocation by using the divine names, or what it was called the voces magica or onomata barbara, which again are very much emphasized both in the Chaldean Oracle, in Porphyry, and in Iamblichus, that these onomata barbara, these voces magica, need to be kept where under a language that was most likely unknown to all of these philosophers, coming from an older barbarian kind of words, but they were using exactly the same words in order to invoke the spirit of the divinity into the statue. The other kind of ritual is the medianic theurgy, and this ritual is very similar to what we would say today would call the seance. So a person is the medium, it's gonna be the guest for the spirit of the divinity. The divinity is gonna take possession of the body, and here we have two different scenarios. One scenario would be the enthusiasmos, from where our word enthusiasm come from, which means completely being possessed by the divinity, and this could be leading to a total loss of control of body movements, and the medium could even speak in different tongues and in different voices. And the other possession, which is a little bit more subtle, is called theophoria or theophory, where the divinity speaks just through the medium voice. So if this ritual were not addressed to gain divine knowledge, addressed to purify your souls, addressed to actually wanting to elevate yourself toward the divine, the same ritual could have been fall into a category which you call Goetic Ritual, part of the Goetia, as we would call it today. So the Goetic ritual are pretty much the same structure, but the purpose is different. The purpose is to gain material, for material gain, or anyhow related to the material appetite of that part of the soul, the material part of the soul. Goethe is also known as black magic, and the word black magic originally came because black is the color attributed to earth, and most of the spirits called upon when you're using a Goetic ritual are spirits that are either terrestrial or subterrestrial. So being earth, considered being black, the color attributed to earth, the magic where you called upon demons, spirits from terrestrial and subterrestrial, they were called black magic. And black is the color that occurs throughout all the rituals. So you need to have a black robe, you need to have black tools, And the sacrifice also recall, we'll see a little bit later, the color black. In the Divinity in the Abstinentia, about abstinence of Porphyry, he mentioned that black magic is in fact operated through evil, and the first time he uses the evil demon, while in his philosophy ex oraculis, so philosophy from oracles, is also specifying that these evil entity, these terrestrial, subterrestrial evil entities are responding to mainly two divinities. One is Serapis, that was a syncretic god, syncretistic god from the Egyptian Osiris and Apis, and Serapis was also the patron of Alexandria. So Serapis was one of the head of one of the boss of the evil spirits, together with Hecate. So going further with all the symbology related to the Goetic rituals and the black magic, in fact the demons were associated to the figure of Cerberus, the famous dog with 3 heads. And he has 3 heads because they represent the 3 elements of earth, water, and air, where these spirits duel. And as well as 3 is the symbol of the material world, like is the triangle is called a triangle of manifestation because it's actually related to material manifestation, is related to this world. So Cerberus, 3 heads, material world, earth, water, and air, control being the spirits, evil spirit, above them controlled by Serapis and Hecate. In fact, there is a statue of Serapis where he is actually having Cerberus beside him, and is putting a hand on one of the head of Cerberus. So it means is controlling the evil spirits. And Hecate as well. Symbology is well known that Hecate is always related to somehow black dogs, and these black dogs again representing her control over the terrestrial and subterrestrial entities. Other components of the rituals were, as we mentioned, according to the sympathetic relation, there were tools. As I mentioned before, in case of black magic, this tool would have been black, so there was some relation between the color and the ritual. There were adding vegetables, plants, animals as well, especially for the sacrifices. Like for instance, if you want to invoke spirits that are ethereal or aerial spirits, you would use birds of white feathers, while if you want to work with aquatic marine divinities, you would use birds with black feathers, because again the black feathers represent the water, and unfortunately the practice would be to drown the black feather bird into the water. So the sacrifice would be done in this way. In the case of terrestrial and subterrestrial entities, the sacrifice would be done with a mammal or a terrestrial animal, an animal that walks with the 4 legs on earth. So this is establishing a connection between earth and the animal itself. Other animal, for instance, birds, like the rooster, is associated with the sun because in the morning it calls out at the sun first. Other recurring animals were the tarantulas and lizards, but as well as minerals, stones, crystals, always following a certain pattern of sympathy between the ritual itself and the divinity and the entity and the spirit that they wanted to invoke and control. Another famous tool was the Strophalus, known as the spinning wheel of Hecate. And we have a description of this tool from Michael Psellus, which is said to be a golden sphere with a sapphire in the middle and a lot of different magical symbol written on it. And this sphere would be controlled by the Theurgist with a leather strap, and it was made to rotate either clockwise or anti-clockwise, whether you want to invoke or license to depart the divinity. So this was a very specific tools. Other add-on to the ritual were, of course, amulets, musical instruments, mostly cymbals, timbres, and flute were the instrument that were mostly providing the background music for this kind of ritual, and are also the instruments, cymbals and timbres are also the instruments that are very close related to shamanic procedures. So in order to process this kind of ritual, in somehow bringing the theurgist and the participant to a kind of altered state of consciousness. And finally, the most invoked gods and divinity that we find records of are definitely Hecate is one of the most popular. She plays, as we see at the beginning, she plays a very major role in the Chaldean oracle, being like the anima mundi, the anima, the soul of the universe. So she's very much known to be invoked both in the Theurgic practice, and we find a lot of reference even in the magical papyri, where she's invoked not only under her name of Hecate, but also reference to the moon phases, under the name of Luna, under the name of Selene, or even the name of Ereshkigal, which was a Babylonian goddess with characteristics that are very similar to the goddess Hecate. Other popular, quote-unquote popular gods to be invoked were, of course, Apollo. For prophecies and oracle, Apollo is known to be the most important gods were to receive oracles from, reference to Delphi, for instance, and Serapis, that we see before being the other one, together with Hecate controlling the terrestrial and subterrestrial demons, spirits, and Serapis sometimes is also corresponding to Pluto, Zeus, or even Dionysus. So this is it for today, for our brief introduction, discussion, summary about what Theurgy is, a little bit of what Neoplatonic thinking is, but definitely I think we will have more chances in the future to see a little bit more in detail the practices and the rituals in other videos. So thanks for your time to stay with me today. If you like the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so you'll be notified when the next videos will come out. And hope to see you again soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.